Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Louise Stokes. I'm from Digital Leaders, and welcome to day 4 of Insight Live Week. And to this session now, transformation starts with your people, how to bring everyone on board. A couple of guidelines before I hand over to our wonderful presenters, Gori and Erica, today. We really encourage you to ask questions on the live session. So do send them through to me on the chat box. There's a chat option on Zoom. You can send through your questions at any time. And then at the end, we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A where I can ask those questions on your behalf to Erica and to Gori. So without further delay, it's my pleasure to hand over to you both, Gori and Erica.
Thanks so much, Louise. Hello, everybody. Hope you're well. Very excited to be here today and to lead you through our webinar, which is all about transformation and starting with your people, right? How do you really bring people on board? So my name is Gori. I'm the CEO of Optical Digital, and I'm joined here by Erica and Neve, which will be super exciting. Hi, Erica. How are you doing?
Hello. How are you? Hello,
everyone.
Good.
Very excited to deliver this webinar with you. So, this session, again, as Louise mentioned, we want to, keep it interactive and definitely would, ask you guys to ask as many questions as you can. Hopefully, when we get to the end, we can run through these questions and share with you, as many insights as we can through the programs that we've worked on and, what we're seeing sort of out there within the digital transformation space. So a little bit about Optical Digital. We are a digital skills training and transformation agency. So we work with a lot of companies, large and small, to roll out programs that help employees essentially adopt new technologies and build a learning culture to ensure they're continuously, building on their own curiosity to learn the tools that put in front of them, but at the same time help drive the organization forward. And that's really a lot of learning that we've seen out there. There is some great approaches that can help you do that. But I want to be able to share with you some of our insights, and it's really been quite a journey for ourselves. And obviously, working with the likes of Erica and a few others, we have come across some really great programs that we'd love to share with you as well. So this session, we thought the best way to do this was to have a bit of a discussion. So myself, obviously CEO of Optical Digital, Erica, very much prevalent in the space around digital transformation and transforming businesses and helping them navigate through change within this digital age. It's always great to know that we are obviously doing this face-to-face by webinar. So you'll sort of see us as we go through this. But I think the best way for us to kick this and structure this webinar is that, I'll give you a few insights of what I've learned, a few key takeaways, and Erica will do the same. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion Q&A about some of the approaches or steps that you can take to ensure that you are really considering your people in this digital transformation journey and helping them bring them along so that they can be the advocates that you're looking for. So I'll start with my view. So again, with Optical Digital, we have been very much working with some businesses to help them navigate through the digital transformation journey. And what that really needs at the heart of it is the people. We work on those programs that support employee adoption, but what's really key is having the people first. The digital age we find is incredibly competitive for businesses, and just simply adopting AI and data analytics and new technologies alone isn't what's going to differentiate your company and give you that competitive edge. So, with more technologies and more businesses taking up technology even faster, you've got to work out what your differentiator is. And that differentiator, we believe, is your people. Your employees are, pretty much the most important advocates for creating change, both inside and outside your organization. And I think that's from our perspective, where we feel you can really make the difference and actually help you drive your organization in the right direction. And I'm sure we've got sort of a mix of individuals in this call, from practitioners to sort of HR individuals. And there are a couple of key insights that I'd like to share with you. As a training company, we really do try to focus on the skills. But if you are embarking on a training program, there are two areas that I believe that you should definitely consider it off, which are, firstly, communication, and then secondly, access. When we're looking at digital transformation and engaging your employees, in terms of access, you have to consider whether the individuals and the employees that you have access to the technology that you are essentially training them on. And by that, I don't just mean they have the computer that they're working on, but they have the ability to really maximize the use of the tools that you're trying to empower them with. Making sure that the actual training fits into their working schedules. So consider the workflow, ensure that it can become business as usual for them once you've trained them very quickly, very easily. You're investing a lot of time and effort into this, so be considerate of the timing for them. Can you create the program that sits within, that fits well within their life? Is it a program that, again, it is timely for them? Think about the place, the support that they're getting, and from a communication perspective, having regular, transparent communication is incredibly important. That you're trying to ensure that the benefits of change within this organization are really well relayed. They have the opportunity for feedback. So these individuals, the employees, can actually give feedback on this change and how it affects them, and showing them that there's a bit of a call to action. So all the touch points that you can really get to grips with and pass the message on. Communication is incredibly key to ensuring the transformation journey works well. So I'd love to hear from you, Erica, kind of what are your your thoughts, a bit of an introduction from yourself, and perhaps some key insights that you might want to share.
Thank you, Gori. I really hear what you were saying around communication and access, totally important. And that's sort of drawing on my experience of predominantly designing large-scale programs, which has meant up to 300,000 employees. So therefore, the little things make a massive difference. But I would say across the board, whether it's retail, whether it's banking, whether it's a tech brand, whether it's a global or UK-based business, there are probably some key learnings that I will take to every project I work on, and we've worked on together, Gori. And that is, don't call it digital transformation if possible. Indeed, don't call it anything if possible, and reframe digital transformation into, as you said, Gori, business as usual. Practically, that means effectively ensuring that your organisation is a learning organisation, and by that, it's ensuring that it's embedded into every process that happens. So in the staff rooms, in the stand-ups, on the notice boards, in the weekly comms, in induction. And that, to me, leads to it being a mindset that's modelled from top to bottom across the organisation, which is around always thinking how technology can be incorporated into our roles and our day-to-day. And secondly, crucially, how we extract value from it. And say, for example, with maybe a retail business, one part of that would be your frontline teams understanding the benefits of customer data and how that plays in their everyday role, and bringing that into stand-ups, bringing that into the conversation every day. So I'd say that's the biggest thing. Make it business as usual, communication, effectively develop a mindset across your whole organisation, which is around extracting value and understanding the benefits. And that essentially means your organisation becomes a continuous learning organisation.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point, especially around having it fit into where they are. So you talked about doing your team stand-ups, for example, right? So how do you know those individual times, or those specific times where people are gathering together with their colleagues and they're talking about it? When can you make sure that learning is really part of that, of that narrative there? So I think actually, to kind of go into a bit of a Q&A and get a feel for what you've seen has worked well. I wanted to kind of start a bit with the basics, right? So we've been fortunate enough to basically engage in some programs that have been fairly successful as far as we've seen at the start of the journey. Again, it's not as simple as an endpoint, but working with individuals that you have seen leading these programs, you yourself, Erica, are there any particular sort of behaviors and mindsets that the leaders of these strategic change efforts have exhibited? So are there any particular behaviors that you've seen that really resonates across or is consistent across sort of many leaders that deliver these sort of programs?
Yes, I think there is. There's some core ways to lead that really encourage and embrace a people-centric approach. And the ones that I've seen where it seems to work really well and it feels like everybody's on board, which is great, and it's all around participation as opposed to coercion and things like that. And that is, the first one I can think of is basically a higher level purpose. And that's really driving with the what and the why, the impact of continuously changing and adapting to a world essentially where the impact of technology is pervasive and the impact is exponential. Really helps. And sort of, if I could give an example, out there right now, Ecolab is a company that leads with a high level example, essentially selling cleaning products, but with a higher level purpose of climate change, addressing climate change and things like that. And also the rise of the B Corp companies for purpose and profit really help lead with a people-centric approach. That means you're always looking at change, because essentially that's what transformation is about, change. So that's one thing, having a higher level purpose, whether that's to make customers' lives better or it's a purpose like addressing climate change. Then secondly, something that may be a little bit simpler, but sometimes quite hard to do, is as a leader, not being afraid to kill something, kill a new product, kill a direction, or kill legacy products. That can be really seem like a huge thing to do, but actually doing it quickly essentially accelerates the transformation and the change and the new era the business is going into. So when I've seen leaders do that, being bold and brave enough to do that, it's really led to change in the organisation. I think looking at your overarching organisation goals, and those organisation goals being around innovation, growth and efficiency, and tying everything to that, because then everybody can be behind what you're doing because they know what the goals of the organisation are. They know what their role is contributing to. And I think a really obvious way of thinking about that is, for example, innovation isn't a department. It really should be a capability, a strategic capability. So that's quite interesting. Another thing I've seen leaders lead with being obsessed with the customer, not the competitors. Then you're always thinking about your customers' needs, which is really interesting because customers' needs are changing with the impact of technology and the use of the products and services that they're using every day. So that drives the organisation to be happy with change and the workforce to be happy that they're meeting the customer's needs. And then lastly, I would say really framing the opportunity of technology and digital and data as an opportunity rather than as maybe the media portrays it sometimes as something to be scared of, as job losses, of automation and things like that. And again, a really clear example of seeing digital as an opportunity is Netflix. So Netflix, of which most people know the story of, and moving to seeing the data opportunity for them. I think I'd add one last point, actually, transparency across the board and leading with transparency, which then creates a safe environment for everybody else to go through the journey and continue to change and continue to learn, and know that can feel vulnerable or can put you in your edge behaviours when you're going through those things and you're learning new things. So I'd say those are my key points. Higher purpose, not afraid to kill a product, direction or legacy product, tie change and transformation and digital transformation to organisation goals of innovation, growth and efficiency, customer obsessed, not competitor obsessed, and grab and see digital as an opportunity. Transparency was my last one. So I'd say that's it.
That's great. That's great. I really like the one around not being worried about killing a product. I think there's an element of being a bit fearless around that area, but at the same time also having that transparency approach. So, creating the environment that managers could decide, yes, we can kill that quite easily because we need to be able to not hold on to legacy products if we really want to move through change. I think on that point about the individuals that are actually going to be involved in this change and the leaders that are leading it, as an agency typically do, we get to practicalities around this, right? So, I'd be keen to know, we've covered the guiding principles and getting practical. How do we actually get started? Or more importantly, who do we start with? So if you're looking at the whole organization, you're thinking, who do I start with to help me, kick off this strategic change? Who do you sort of think is the right people to target first? And also, once you pick them, how do you get buy-in? How do you win them over? How do you win their hearts and minds over? Because again, these people are the ones who are really going to be driving this for you.
Again, I think it's two-pronged at this phase, at this part of the process, really kicking off and knowing who to start with. And my experience and other projects I've observed that have gone plan, or mostly to plan, because there's always changes that happen in those projects, would be to start with two levels of the organisation at once. And that is at leadership and senior leadership, and then those closest to your customers. So that could be your frontline staff, it could be your in-store staff, it could be your call centre staff. Whoever's closest to your customer, and start with those two groups at the same time and ensure that you are remaining really customer obsessed, because this is how you get buy-in. So as you start with these two groups of people, you are gathering the information back from your customers. So it might be your customer sentiment, your customer feedback scores, anything like that, new product adoption, anything like that. Really keep that front and central to what you're doing and drive the change with that. And then within those two groups of people, I always believe in really looking for characters within those groups that have some kind of social capital, and these come from every level of the organization. They're the people that are the go-to problem solvers. They're the people that it may not be their role to solve something, but you know they're going to help you when you need to, and those people then become your ambassadors and really quickly become the catalyst of change within your organizations. So therefore, those two, your frontline and your leadership, find your people with social capital to really bring on board and become your ambassadors of the new ways of working, of the program you're rolling out. And then the other key bit of work that I believe really helps set something up for success is when you're planning the work, also plan against the roles in your organisation and the departments in your organisation, a so what line. Because if you can tap into why does this matter to me, why do I care, for each department, each type of role in your organisation, you're bringing them on board, because you're really igniting the mindset of I believe in this and this is relevant to me and my role and the customers that I serve. And that actually takes a bit of planning. It's actually having a document that says the so what's for all those people, and then you tailor your comms to really voice those so what's and bring them home to your organisation, the people in your organisation, so they see the value to them and their role from day one.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think one other thing to mention is, often people might be a bit fearful of change, right? So unfortunately, we have this tabloided approach to automation in organizations and making people, even especially in the front line, feeling like they're going to be losing out to automation quite drastically. So there is something within the buy-in involving reframing risk. I think you might have mentioned it briefly, which is helping them better visualize the benefits of the change and actually then becoming an ambassador for changing the organization. Ensuring that if roles are being automated, they might be fearful of that and might need to understand that actually this automation will help remove some of the sort of medial tasks that they may be doing and give them time to be a bit more creative and ensure they can focus on the creative parts of the roles that they have. So again, reframing risk can help you really win them over and really understand where this will make sense for them in their lives and kind of alleviate any pressures or stresses they have within their current workflow, and ensure that they can be part of the journey as well. I guess the second point is once you've done that and you've got them excited and the program's about to kick off and you've got a couple of ambassadors that you can rely on, how do you keep them on board? How do you keep them excited by the journey and engaged by the journey and wanting to be able to keep this momentum going around this change?
Several ways. The comms strategy around a program is really, really important. So keep telling stories and actually model the transparency, because sometimes there'd be really hard periods. And it's talking about those hard periods, and it's talking about the successes, and it's talking about the work that everyone's doing to drive the business forward and create better products and services for their customers. So keep communicating transparently. And I think there's another aspect to this. I think there's a role for doing scaled rollouts so that you can see where other people are on the journey, where you're going to get to. So you've always got somebody that within your organization your colleagues and your employees can talk to them about what the next part of the journey is like, how they experienced it, etc., etc. I'm a big champion of having champions, so leading from the inside, so having people that their role is to drive these new ways of working, these ways of adopting to technology. And crucially, I believe, and I've seen lots of success when people are paid to do this role, or are given some type of recognition or return on investment for that. So it might be additional training, it might be different opportunities, but ultimately being paid to do a role makes it very concrete within the organisation, and that's really important. And then, of course, tying in however performance and success is measured in the organisation to that role and to the programme, and make sure that's through the entire organisation. Because actually sometimes if that doesn't happen, your blockers can be middle management, maybe area directors, managers of departments, because they may not be measured against some of the successes of these, some of the successes of bringing in change. Therefore, it is not their priority. So therefore, making sure, as we said at the beginning, that this is tied into overarching organisation goals means everybody's on board, and making sure people that are really the ambassadors and at the responsibility of delivering this, even if it's just to a few colleagues in their immediate team, that they're recognised in some way, and that may be paying them to do part of that role.
Good answer. It's really interesting when you talk about kind of aligning the business goals. Middle management might at some point say, how important is this for the business? And they may not be able to visualize where, this not only ties in, but it's actually built around the business goals. And I think that's really important to ensure that you bring everybody on board by considering how it aligns with what the business is trying to achieve overall. So thank you so much. I think there's some really interesting insights there. To know if you have any examples of any either organizations that you've seen that have been doing this really well, or particular cases that sort of stand out for you as well. And just to to remind everybody on the call, please do ask questions as we're going through. We'll have a moment to talk through and answer some of these for you. But we'd definitely encourage. We've seen a couple come through already, but please do add some more questions to the chat.
I know we've only got a couple of minutes before we're going to go to chat. So I think there's 3 examples I would give. So Starling Bank, the disruptor bank, and their CEO, Anne Bowden, is a really good example of leading a learning organisation that's continuously changing. The reason I say that is every role in that organisation is designed to directly impact on the customer experience and solving customer problems. Every employee knows that and how they're contributing to it. And the leader, Anne Bowden, is very transparent with her external communication, so therefore probably internally as well, about what it means to lead a bank doing new things for the first time. So that's an example. Secondly, I'd say it's always worth looking outside of sectors and industry and even digital transformation. And I look towards the behavioural insights team. These are the guys behind things like getting us all to sign up to pension schemes, working with the government. They have a model called the EAST model, and I've embedded the EAST model into nearly all the transformation programmes I've worked on. And EAST is about getting people to participate rather than coercion. And it stands for easy. Make it easy. Harness the power of defaults, reduce the hassle factor. So this is business as usual. Make it attractive. Apply personalization. Make sure you've worked out the so what for everybody in your organization. Make it social. And this is the idea of capitalizing on networks that exist in your organization, not necessarily departmental, and don't make it a top-down, top-down approach. Consider the networks that exist in your organization. And then, of course, last, the T in EAST is timely. Make it point of need. There's a really good paper on this online. If you look up the Behavioural Insights Team EAST model, you can read it. And then last of all, I'd probably say Microsoft. And you might think this is a strange example to give when we're talking about people first, because Microsoft has obviously transformed from a business model around selling products and licenses and devices to being cloud-based and platform as a service, with Teams and MS365, which I'm sure lots of you are now using. seems a technical solution, but actually what they're really doing now is repositioning internally, externally, and really with their resellers, which is some work that Upskill Digital are helping with. But this is around collaboration, communication, and increased productivity and efficiency. And it's really not about features and spec. And they understand that what they're doing now is around optimizing humans within an organization, and those are the most important people, and they're doing that internally and externally. So I think they're a really great example as well.
Great, thanks so much. I think there's a lot to pick apart from that, and thank you so much. I think it's always good to hear real life examples so people can really get a feel for how that relates to them and how they can help them in their journey. So I think now we can probably jump on to the questions, and thank you for everybody for adding the questions into the chat. There's a fair few coming through, so hopefully I will hand over to Louise, who will just handle this area for us as well. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Erica, and thank you, Gori. Yes, we do have a few questions that have come through. So if you do have one while we have Gori and Erica on this live session, do send it through in the chat box, and we'll get through to it now. So first of all, someone said we use multiple ways to communicate with our colleagues every day. In brackets, WhatsApp, Teams, email. Which one should we prioritize?
Erica, let you take this one.
I don't necessarily think you need to prioritize, but I think the key thing is creating the ways of working with those tools. So, for example, no internal emails, only external emails to clients and customers and partners, using Slack for internal communication, and then make sure it's very easy to adopt the new ways of working and how you use a channel, if you're using Teams, how you use Teams, etc. And then make it very clear what WhatsApp is for, which is actually a really good tool for the informal networks, which are quite powerful within the organization. So it's just about recognizing those exist, because actually, if you look at how we operate in our private lives, we have multiple platforms we communicate on. So we're more than capable. It's just us understanding how we use them in the same way that we use them like that in our private lives. And it's setting that standard and actually talking about it in an organization.
And I think I'd also add to that is that, be comfortable to be able to create a policy around the use. It'll help you have a bit more sort of management of what you'd like people to be using it for. You really help when you start to build a bit of a policy around it. You'll get under the skin of what you think will be the most productive way to use these platforms, and then verbalize that to the organization or the departments you're looking to roll that out to. Because we've done training on platforms like Slack and other communication tools, because it's really important that people know to be able to be guided on how best to use these. How we use them at home might be different to how you want them to be used in the workplace as well.
Cool, definitely. So defining it. A kind of question that I think is related to this from Monica. Thank you, Monica, for sending it in. It says, how about people who are resistant to change? Thank you. So top tips for that, guys.
So that's where the working with on the ground digital ambassadors and champions, and identifying the people that are identifying the people that can do that and problem solve, and then really working with those ambassadors, because it's better to hear it from a peer and be brought on board from a peer than an outside agency or training agency or a manager or leader. Ensure that those people are given the skills to really address the so what for the individuals, because it comes down to normally the so what. Why is it relevant to me? What I do now is effective. It's dry. I'm meeting my targets. I'm successful in my role. Why do I need to do something differently or act differently when I have the processes in place? So then it's about making the so what relevant to those roles and giving that to ambassadors. And secondly, I think it's again about reframing risk, because quite often the resistance to change is linked to risk, is linked to being anxious about something. So it's assuring that this reframing, the risk of not changing is greater than the risk of changing or going on a program. And that again is a comms piece that then can be translated and transferred to the ambassadors or champions to help disseminate.
I'd add to that really quickly, is like human beings are typically fairly resistant to change. I mean, across the board, that's really what naturally we are. And often you have to make them feel like they are part of the process. And by that, that might mean really not just selling in the benefits, but making them feel like they were consulted in the change as well. If you roll something out and tell them this is what's going to change, they may feel, well, I don't feel like I'm really part of this change, and I'm going to be resistant to it naturally. And it's not always just an age thing. It's really important that we look at this as how do we make you feel that you were at least consulted, or you are part of it, or your department is recommended, or we think the company will, benefit from it, so that they can at least feel they're part of this process. More from just being told how to adopt this.
Wonderful, thank you for that. So in terms of senior leaders of an organisation, have you had to deal with those who have lower levels of digital skills than their workforce? Any top tips for that?
Yes, actually, it's quite common, because many people in senior roles have PAs, EAs, etc., etc. So all those things that maybe many other people in their workforce are naturally doing and adapting and using. So, maybe, for example, off the top of my head, they are utilising all the features on their mobile phones to enable them to map their journey to a meeting, etc., etc. Senior leaders don't necessarily have to do, because they essentially have the support from an EA or PA to do those kind of things with them. So in those cases, it can be challenging, and it can be challenging depending on the culture of the organisation as well. So that's something to be really mindful of. And then I think it comes down to recognising how to design a program for senior leaders, which is around, say, forward leadership, framing it around leadership, framing it around forward leadership, framing it around the skills and strengths that you already have as leaders, and then wrapping around what that means in a world where technology is changing that world very rapidly, and bringing it that way. So it becomes, again, it's the so what, why is it relevant to me, but always harnessing their strengths to then work on the areas that you want to increase their awareness of. So they may not need to learn all of the skills, although we would probably say they do, but that might take them a while to bring on board. It's about them seeing the relevance of it, and then if they see the relevance, that's half the battle won, and then they will start leading the organisation with the same gusto. And then as they actually see employees and the workforce changing, we generally find they come on board with the other aspects of it, the skills development aspects of it. Because quite often leaders may not feel that they need skills development at their level and their degree, where actually we're in a time where we're going to be continuously learning new skills every single day.
And I think, just to lead on the continuously learning point, it's not so much about getting overly technical with some of the senior leadership, because they generally can be quite sort of worried about needing to, not understanding why they need to know such technical levels of skill, and it can be a bit challenging to do that. So, building that learning culture in the organization, making leaders feel like they have the ability to grow their own skill set continually is incredibly important, because what we don't want to do is have this typical kind of imposter syndrome where people are expecting leadership. In some cases, people don't expect, maybe because of age, perhaps wherever they're coming from, even if they're young leaders, expectant to know all the tools that are put in front of them and be able to use it well. But if many of us have this, then how do we ensure that we want to continually learn? So our real aim is to how to build that environment around continual learning, by also driving curiosity amongst the skills that they could want to know and to understand.
Excellent. There's more of a scenario that James Wyatt has put forward, and potentially you have some thoughts on this. And thank you, James, for adding in your comments here. So he has said the difficulty is you normally have a project manager / product owner who is responsible for delivering / implementing the change. And this has come from a senior responsible owner or director. But when service areas / managers do not agree with it, it's a project manager who is to blame for the change. Everyone needs to own it and understand why the change is happening. Thoughts on this, guys?
Yeah, completely agree with that point brought in, and that is around everyone owning it and understanding it. I think that comes back into ensuring that the organisational goals and the strategy applied to the organisation around efficiency, growth and innovation is tied into this programme, whatever it might be. And then it does become everybody owns it and they understand the relevance to it. But it is a challenge because I think, as we talked about earlier, it can be the service areas or the managers that become the blockers because they haven't been brought on board, or they aren't being measured against that, so it's not in their priority list to support. And again, it's the design at the beginning. It's bringing those people into the program and consulting them. So a way to do that, if it's not possible to co-design the program with them, is to do small scale rollouts where you will naturally learn a lot about the challenges of the program. So start with a very small number of people, potentially only 20 to 100 people, even less in a smaller organisation, and you'll keep learning and learning from each of your scaled rollouts, and you'll get that feedback from those managers and those service managers, and they will feel included in the journey and heard as they go, and they see the changes and the adaptations made as the program progresses and grows and spreads across the rest of the organisation and becomes business as usual.
Yeah, I'd agree with Erica there. I think identifying the blockers is important, because what you really want to do is ensure that they are bought into it more than anywhere else, and it aligns with the company's goals and objectives. And it's not an easy thing to do, but when you look at the bite-sized, small-scale rollout, small-scale chunks, you can start to collect feedback quite quickly to better understand what those blockers are, and make sure you can tailor it in a way that the messaging seems right to them, because again, you need them on board to ensure that everybody can move forward in the right direction.
Awesome. And James has responded there. Really helpful. Thank you. I took an agile approach and realized things iteratively, and they saw the benefits. We probably have time for 3 more questions, so we'll just get through them. From Hazy here, what's an action that small business can take today?
You may be doing this in your small business already, but I probably can't recommend highly enough trying OKRs. And these are setting goals that you visit regularly, and you only have about 2 or 3 of them in a quarter. And underneath those, you have targets to those goals, which are innovation, efficiency, and growth. And they're very simple to understand and very easy to work towards. And because you're continuously measuring them and you revisit them every single 3 months, it keeps it forefront to your organisation. So really good for small organisations, because you'll see the changes happening quickly. And actually the OKRs should be stretch goals. So if you're achieving them, they're probably not hard enough, and actually there should be some failure rate within them that actually then encourages that change mentality, always learning mentality, because how do you adapt and then create a new OKR for the next quarter, So I'd say looking at that, so you're taking a whole organisational approach and seeing if OKRs work for you, and looking at some case studies. So there's some interesting case studies online of organisations that use OKRs. Bulb is one. Google is a famous user of OKRs, but they're obviously a very huge organisation. And there's some really good free tools in launching OKRs. So I'd say my biggest takeaway for working with small organisations and SMEs and micro organisations is look at OKRs as a way of driving your organisation forward.
Yeah, I can agree with Eric. I think OKRs, objectives and key results are how we actually do ourselves as an organisation. It helps us, it helps from a department perspective get a broader view of where we'd like to take departments and making sure we are really making those stretch goals. Another approach that I would say for a small business, very simply, is get an understanding of the lay of the land of skills across your organisation. You can do a very simple skills audit. It could be a very simple kind of needs assessment test to better understand, what skills they believe they're lacking that really inhibit their productivity in their role, and perhaps what would they like to learn next. You might find the results can be quite interesting, quite inspiring. Again, the aim is to get them considering their skill sets and what they need to continue to build on. That will start you on the journey of building that learning culture, that continuous learning culture that we really want to roll out. So get a lay of the land in a very simple survey across your organization to identify what perhaps they would love to learn themselves, and where the gaps may lie. And that might make you feel a bit more connected to the level of skills in your organization, and where you can help push that forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Gori. I think that's answered one of Elizabeth Locker's questions. Her other one here is, would you recommend the creation of personas, user or customer, and perhaps a support persona as opposed to roles?
What do you think, Gori?
It's interesting. I think, so we've built a few programs that very much revolve around building frameworks for capability, for competency testing, right? And, those competencies very much can be broken down into a particular persona, to help an organization best know what ideal would look like. I think from a customer perspective, it's very useful to understand that, well, not just from a digital marketing perspective, but understand how the customers have changed, because those behaviors will allow you to better work with that sort of data from the customer and identify where you need to change your approaches to best fit them. And that's probably from an outside the organization, so looking in, how are your customers changing to help you? I think personas are very effective from a marketing perspective. I've used them a lot, but from an internal perspective, I think sometimes the interesting about personas is when you start to look at a workplace that might have sort of multiple generations right across the organization. You really want to identify how the organization is changing, and it can be quite useful to identify the difference between very young leaders to slightly sort of older line managers, and work out where they will perhaps produce the ideal candidate that you want people to not to aspire to be, but essentially build their skills towards, so to speak. So I do think it's an effective approach, but it's actually probably more rarely used when you get that skill assessment.
I think something I've seen talking about, like you said, diverse and inclusive organisations, and we now are in a situation where we have 5 generations in the workplace. A nice way of thinking, another way of doing it is having attributes. And actually thinking about not just customer experience but employee experience. And I've seen, so the co-op group does this really, really well, and I've seen their employee experience framework or chart, I don't know what you'd call it, and in that it really thinks about the whole life journey of an employee and the experience they have, which is really great. It's really employee centric, but around that it looks at the capabilities and the attributes they'd like their employees to have, and that's a very nice way of putting it and thinking about it, because then it does really encompass it encourages inclusivity and diversity, as opposed to having a persona that maybe somebody doesn't relate to for whatever reason, because it can be difficult to relate to a persona.
Fantastic. Erica and Gori, thank you so much for taking the time to share today. I've just popped their contact details back up on the page, so do reach out to them on Twitter, but also reach out to me if you have any inquiries, and I can pass them on if you don't catch these details for whatever reason. Gori, do you want to sum up for us today? Thank you so much.
Yes, it's been a really great opportunity to talk you through some of our insights that we've seen along the way. As mentioned, Eric and I, we've worked on many programs together, and again, looking at programs that often, or companies are very often quick to embed new technologies, but often leave the people out of the equation, or at least don't focus on them as much as possible. Often have a bit of a negative effect across the scaling of the strategic change. So when you're looking to bring people along, Erica's mentioned a little bit as well, and I'll let her do a bit of a wrap up, but consider the communication that you have to your individuals. Make sure they feel a bit consulted in this change where possible, surveys, audits. Consider where you are rolling out the internal communication to ensure people feel they can join the journey. Consider access, so making sure that these devices that they should be using, if you have to bring your own device to work policy, for example, how does that affect how you ensure people can engage with any training that you do, and consider the training program that you roll out to to embed some of the continual learning approaches that we want to exhibit within an organization as well. And Erica, you wrap up in a second, then I'm going to tell you all a bit about a giveaway that we're giving as well. So Erica, do you want to sort of wrap up, say a few words?
Yes, let me think. I suppose my key takeaways would be make it business as usual. Transparency and communication is key. Use social capital and networks within your organisation to help communicate and drive the programme that you're doing. And then actually it's really about mindset. And if you can ignite the mindset that it's, I believe in this, it's relevant to me in my role and my life, that you will then continuously enact the behaviours or learn to enact the behaviours to adopt that way of being, which is really great. That sounds a bit convoluted, but one way to quickly address things like that is something that we do quite often in a lot of our work, is really get people to think about how they already have a digital mindset, essentially, how they already are very adaptable, by getting them to think about a day in the life of themselves and the times that they interact and use technology to improve their experience of life and how they get to work and how they buy things and how they find out things and things like that. And then we get them to flip that into their role, their job roles, and what they do every day at work, and how we can enhance it that way intentionally. I'll say that's it.
I think that's a really good approach. I think just to sort of mention, we, as part of this this webinar, we are actually giving away a 30-minute digital mindset workshop. We have a survey which we wanted people to fill out, and we've added it on the chat as well. And you know, as Erica was discussing, when we do a lot of our digital mindset workshops, you know, other than to understand the lay of the land with regards to digital and the touch points you have with digital products or just technology generally, we want people to kind of embody I might already be doing it now, I already have a digital mindset, but exactly how do I describe it is one that can do in conversation with many others as well, and our peers. So please, if you can, if you head to the feedback form, we love feedback, so please share. It's bit.ly/upskill webinar. You can go all lowercase if you'd like as well, that still works. And please do fill this out. You know, we will be sort of announcing the winners in the coming weeks, but essentially we have a free 30-minute digital mindset workshop to help you really get your people to understand what it means to adopt that growth mindset to continuously learn and grow their own skill set at the same time.
Thank you, Gori. Thank you, Erica. I think today was really engaging. Thank you for bringing your energy and so much insight to this session today. Thank you, everyone, for joining into the live session, and to those that are watching the recording later on. Thank you also. And we'll see you all in another session very soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys. Have a great day.